Imagine you're home alone late at night. The house is quiet, the lights are low, and suddenly your phone rings. You hesitate, because something deep in your gut tells you not to answer. But curiosity wins, and when you pick it up, what you hear on the other end chills you to the bone. For some, these calls were creepy coincidences. For others, they were terrifying encounters that changed their lives forever. And a few were voices that should not have been possible. Tonight, we're diving into the top 15 scariest phone calls that really happened. Stick around, because after this, you'll never hear your phone the same way again. Welcome back to Lore of the Multiverse, the channel where we explore the darkest mysteries and the strangest stories from across time and space. If you love chilling tales like these, hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and join us as we unravel the unexplained. Now, let's pick up the phone and step into the darkness. 15. The babysitter's call. The story of the babysitter who kept receiving mysterious phone calls is so unsettling. It's been told and retold for decades, even inspiring horror films. One night in the 1970s, a teenage babysitter in the Midwest began receiving calls from a man telling her to check the children. She brushed it off at first, thinking it was just a cruel prank. But the calls kept coming, each one more insistent, more urgent. Terrified, she called the police, who advised her to keep the caller on the line the next time. When the trace came through, it revealed the unthinkable. The calls were coming from inside the house. Police rushed over, and what they found still sends shivers down spines today. The intruder had been watching her the entire time. 14. The ghostly goodnight. In the 1980s, a woman grieving the loss of her grandmother received a phone call she swore was real. It was late, and when she answered, she heard her grandmother's voice say softly, "Good night, dear." The call was brief, almost tender, but impossible. The grandmother had passed away 2 weeks earlier. Phone records showed no incoming call at that time. Some dismissed it as stress or imagination, but the woman insisted it was her grandmother's final goodbye. Paranormal researchers point to this as one of the most compelling examples of phone calls from the dead, a phenomenon that's been documented across cultures. 13. The airplane tragedy. Calls. On September 11, 2001, passengers on United Flight 93 used onboard phones to call their loved ones. These calls are among the most chilling ever recorded: panicked voices, chaos in the background, and final goodbyes. One man told his wife, "We're going to do something. I love you." Another said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine," though both knew what was coming. Their bravery shone through, but so did the sheer terror of those final moments. These calls weren't just terrifying, they became historical records of courage in the face of disaster. 12. The unknown caller. In the woods. A man hiking alone in the Pacific Northwest became lost after sunset. Cold and disoriented, he tried his phone for GPS, but it had no service. Then suddenly, it rang. Confused, he answered, and on the other end was his own voice, distorted and whispering a string of numbers. The call ended abruptly, and his phone went back to no signal. The next day, rescuers found him exactly at the coordinates he had heard. He never figured out how the call came through. Some believe it was a glitch in time, others a guardian spirit, but he swore it was his voice. 11. The call from the future. In 2004, a man in England claimed he received a call from his own number. When he answered, the voice on the other end was older, calmer, and eerily familiar. It was himself. The voice warned him about a specific road and a car accident. Days later, the man's route home was blocked by a crash at the exact spot described. He couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, he had spoken to his future self, and that the warning had saved his life. Skeptics suggest a prank, but the man kept his phone logs as proof of the bizarre incoming call. 10. The haunted hotel room. Guests at a historic hotel in New Orleans often reported late-night calls from unoccupied rooms. One traveler in 1992 remembered being woken by the phone at 3 a.m. When he answered, he heard faint sobbing and a whisper saying, "Get out." The front desk later confirmed no calls had been made to his room. Curious, he asked about the room number displayed on his caller ID. The clerk froze, because that room had been closed for years after a murder-suicide. Other guests have reported similar calls, adding to the hotel's chilling reputation. 9. The stalker's voice. In the late 90s, a young woman began receiving phone calls late at night. The caller described exactly what she was wearing: what she was doing, and even the layout of her apartment. Terrified, she contacted police, but they couldn't trace the calls in time. The stalker always hung up just before they could lock in on the location. After weeks of this torment, an officer discovered that the calls were being made from a payphone directly across the street from her building. She had been watched the entire time, the caller just outside her window. 8. The call after the funeral. A grieving widow reported one of the most disturbing calls ever documented. Just days after her husband's funeral, she received a voicemail from his number. The message was chillingly simple: "I'm okay. Don't worry." His voice was clear and familiar. But when she tried to replay the voicemail, it disappeared from her phone. Phone records showed no call had ever come through. Experts suggested it was grief or a technical glitch, but she swore it was her husband reaching out from beyond. 7. The distress signal at sea. In 1947, sailors picked up a mysterious distress signal near Indonesia. The voice over the radio cried out, "All officers, including the captain, are dead. I am dying." Static filled the channel, followed by a final scream. When a rescue crew reached the source, they found a ship, the SS Orang Medan, adrift with its entire crew dead, their faces frozen in horror. No survivors, no cause of death. To this day, the Orang Medan distress call is considered one of the greatest maritime mysteries ever recorded. 6. The wrong number. A man in California received a call from an unfamiliar number late at night. The voice simply said, "Don't go to work tomorrow." Thinking it was a prank, he ignored it. The next day, an industrial accident at his workplace killed several people, at the exact spot where he normally worked. He had called in sick. Investigators traced the number, but it was disconnected. To this day, he believes that call saved his life. 5. The crying child. In the early 2000s, multiple people reported receiving late-night calls where all they could hear was a child crying. One woman traced the number and was shocked to find it belonged to a house that had burned down years before, with a child trapped inside. Paranormal investigators have studied similar cases, dubbing them residual hauntings through technology. Whether a glitch, a hoax, or something else, the thought of a child's cries echoing through phone lines years after their death is deeply unsettling. 4. The prison call. An officer in Texas once received a threatening phone call from an inmate he had helped convict. The voice on the other end promised revenge. When the officer checked the prison logs, he was stunned to learn the inmate had died 3 days earlier. Other guards confirmed the voice matched the man exactly. Was it a cruel prank? A recording? Or did the inmate reach out from beyond the grave to deliver his final threat? 3. The static voice. A family in Ohio kept getting strange calls filled with static and faint whispers. They finally recorded one and enhanced the audio, only to hear a single name repeated over and over: the name of their deceased relative. The family was shaken, especially when the calls stopped as suddenly as they had begun. Some paranormal researchers argue that spirits can manipulate electronic signals, and in this case, they may have used the phone line as a way to reach out. 2. The 911 mystery. Emergency operators have some of the most chilling call records in existence. In one case, a woman screamed for help, begging police to hurry. Suddenly, she went quiet. A faint whisper followed: "They found me." The line went dead. When officers arrived, the house was locked from the inside and completely empty. No sign of the woman was ever found. To this day, the 911 call remains unexplained, a haunting reminder of the unknown dangers lurking in the dark. 1. The final goodbye. Perhaps the most chilling call of all came to a man whose best friend had just died in a car accident. Hours after the crash, his phone rang, and it was his friend's number. When he answered, he heard his friend's voice say, "Thank you for everything." Then the call dissolved into static. The grieving man checked his call history, but there was no record of the call ever happening. He insists it was his friend's spirit, reaching out one last time. And that brings us to the end of our list. Phones are meant to connect us, but sometimes they connect us to things we can't explain, and perhaps things we're not meant to understand. If you enjoyed tonight's video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story from Lore of the Multiverse. And tell us in the comments, have you ever received a phone call that defied explanation? Until next time, stay safe, and think twice before you answer that ringing phone.